And we go just this in-depth conversation about it. And then he goes out and he gets busted for stealing so that he can get the approval of people. So that's still in the process. And we have these good, deep conversations with him about the fruit of the gospel in his life will be that he has meaning and purpose for life, and he's full instead of empty. That he doesn't have to try to impress other people, but he has this confidence that comes from knowing God. Another young guy who was, he says, addicted to marijuana, and after several months of coming to the youth ministry, he decided, I'm done. And he had a spirit, kind of a powerful experience for him, a spiritual experience. He's actually going to share at our church tonight of his story of kind of how this all happened. This experience, and he has his struggles still as he's trying to get clean and sober. But he is the difference that I can see is his heart is so different. That before, if you would talk to him about quitting, it's the last thing he wanted to do. He every day for months. And then all of a sudden, he has just got this incredible sorrow in his heart. Anytime he slips up, he talks to one of the leaders and he just feels terrible. And then he also says, but every time I mess up, I also feel like I'm getting closer to Christ somehow. Because he's being forgiven and it is strengthened each time. Those are some differences. And really, each of these people, with every situation, you look at it from the outside, you just think, man, this is just absolutely hopeless that they could ever become a healthy person. It is, really. It's a miracle, an absolute miracle, anytime any person puts their faith in Christ and it bears fruit. It makes a difference in the way they live, the way they think, the way they act. Because you probably have these people in mind where you think, oh, this person, I'd love to see them experience the grace of God, but they're just so far from it. Well, everybody is. I mean, all of us. And it's just this amazing miracle when God gets hold of us. And so there's a few more people that I am praying for. In fact, just this last week, this guy came to my office because his mom told him he should talk to me. He should talk to somebody. And I know his family a little bit. None of them have ever been to our church, but I've done some community service hours with us. And so this young guy came and he said, I'll be honest, I'm in a gang. And the reason he came to talk to me because his girlfriend had broken up with him. And this is the first time he's really experiencing pain. And he's just in despair. And he said, I don't have anybody to talk to about this. And he shared things with me that he says he's never shared with anybody. That he's scared, that he's sad, all this stuff. And he can't share this with his gang. The emotions are off limits. You're not supposed to have feelings. And we talked about getting out of the gang and putting his faith in Christ. And it was like this, he wants it, but he says, I just don't know if I can do it. Because the pressures to stay in, once you're in, are so strong. So I'm praying for him. And if you'll pray with me for him. I've been praying for the gangbangers of Delhi for a long time. So I'm praying that he's the first of a lot. That's a big difference, right? To see if somebody comes out of a gang and they begin to serve God. That's pretty visible fruit. One final story. Do you like to hear all these stories? I'd like to share some stories of what's happening. One guy, I know him because we worked on a project together raising funds to improve the skate park. And this has been a while since we've done any of that stuff, but I'm still in touch with him every once in a while. And he has a serious illness, and that's caused him to have some questions about if there even is a God, because why would this happen to him? So we've gone out for lunch a couple times recently. On the most recent time, it was about 2 weeks ago, good conversation, and I was sharing with him some of the reasons I believe, some encouraging him to consider, what about this and this and this, and how would you explain that? And he's really thinking about these things deeply. Yes, maybe there is a God. And as we're driving back into Delhi, because we went to lunch somewhere else, this song comes, it was on the classical station, and this beautiful song, it's Barber's Adagio. And it's like this beautiful but sad song comes on the radio. I'm like, oh, this is a good song. He turns it up. And then we pull up in front of my office. I say, can I pray for you before you go? He says, okay. So I just prayed very simply that God would show himself to him and show him how much he loves him. And he'd be able to see God's glory and just a few simple things. And when I open my eyes, I see that he's just almost in tears. And he kind of pulls himself together and says, one more question. Is it okay to pray even if you don't believe? I said, absolutely. He says, well, then who you pray to? I said, well, you just pray this. God, if you're there. He says, okay, I could do that. So close, where the difference for him would be a sense of peace, a joy down inside, despite the illness. Maybe, hopefully, God would even heal him of that. But even with it, a sense of peace and of joy. That is our hope for Delhi, that the gospel bears fruit. It changes lives. That's the hope in Tracy, isn't it? That this good news about Jesus really makes a difference. That it really saves people. It really transforms the way they live, the way they act, the way they think. And this is why we plant churches. This is why we still choose to live in Delhi. Not many people do choose to live there. They end up there because they can't afford a house in Modesto, they can't afford a house in Turlock, so they end up in Delhi. But we choose to live there because we believe that this good news of Jesus makes a difference. And that's why you plant a church anyway. That's why Mark came to plant a church in Tracy's, because he knows that the gospel makes a difference. It's made a difference in his own life. It's made a difference in your lives. And so it just becomes something natural, right? If you know what God has done for you, you want other people to be part of that and experience it also. And so we find ways of sharing the good news, of making that center stage. It's hard as a pastor to avoid sometimes all the programs, and you want to do things like other churches. But the real thing is just to keep sharing that good news. Find ways to keep that in the center stage and living it out too. That's another way that we share it, is let people see it. So there's a lot of reasons maybe not to plant churches, but there's this one great reason to do it, because Jesus came and Jesus changes lives. So when I share with people about planting churches, I'm not going to share too much about this. I'm assuming you're all kind of on board with this sort of thing, just because you're here. But I may want to emphasize that the way we plant churches is the same as the reason why. Why do we plant churches? Because the gospel changes lives. How do we plant churches? We share the gospel and we live it out. Very simple. Now, I have a friend who's in Washington State, and I know him from college, and we graduated together from college with a degree in theology, and he was preparing for ministry, but ended up taking a job at Costco because his wife was still in school, and he didn't find any ministry jobs there, and he couldn't leave because his wife was still in school. So 10 years of working at Costco, but this whole time he becomes an elder in his church, he's teaching Sunday school, so he's involved, but he gets to feel pulled more and more. I want to live like a missionary right here on my block. And so he ended up connecting with some other guys who were meeting every week at this like Denny's type restaurant, having conversations between Christians and people who are not Christians about what they believe and why it's important and all that, and just this exciting kind of thing going on. And now he's planting a church. And the way he talks about being a missionary is, hanging out at Denny's, having these conversations, hanging out with his hockey buddies. He's from Canada, so he plays hockey. And all this 10 years of relationships from working at Costco. And in his neighborhood, he does things like throw birthday parties for people, invite people over for root beer floats, and all kinds of ways just to get to know people. And he finds little ways in there to, invite them to church now, but then